I'd like to welcome everybody to our 7th induction ceremony of the Joliet Area Sports Hall of Fame, recognizing 5 individuals this evening: Ed Brady, Terry Gannon, Ken Parker, Matt Seffner, and Brent Wadsworth. I'm Dave Laquetta. I serve as the chairman of the Joliet Area Sports Hall of Fame Committee, and we are excited to have our 5 inductees tonight, as well as their family and friends, here at Silver Cross Field in the Hall of Fame room. And I know many of you have already looked around the room, and the room tells a lot of stories just by reading the plaques and stuff. And we're going to have a lot more stories after tonight with the 5 inductees. So let's begin, first of all, with our first inductee is Ed Brady from Morris High School. Ed really was the linchpin for starting some great things in football, first at Morris and then in the Joliet surrounding area. He earned all-state recognition his senior year and led the program to the first of what has now become 10 state championship game appearances. 1 year later, after Ed left and got the program going, they won their first of 3 state titles. He went on to the University of Illinois, where he was a linebacker, made a Liberty Bowl appearance in 1982, and 1 year later, he was a starting linebacker for the last Illinois football team to win a Big Ten title outright. That's a long time ago. We need more of Eds out there, right, Sloat? And the only Illini squad in the history of the program to go a perfect 9-0. And that team eventually went on to the Rose Bowl, where they played UCLA. The following spring, Ed again made history by being one of the earliest area players to get drafted by an NFL team when he was selected in the 8th round by the Los Angeles Rams. 2 years later, he was back in the Chicago area on the Rams sideline when the Bears won their only Super Bowl that year in 1985. And then a couple years later, he had his own opportunity to play in a Super Bowl with the Cincinnati Bengals when he was with them for 6 years. He finished his career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from 1992 to 1995, and he closed out a brilliant 12-year NFL career. So at this time, I'd like to present Ed Brady for induction into the Hall of Fame.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Thanks, Dave. I'd like to thank the Joliet Sports Hall of Fame Committee and also Dave Laquetta, obviously. Also, congratulations to the other inductees. It's a great honor. I want to thank my family, and some of them are here today. My dad, Jack, my sisters, Barb, Gail, and Ann. Barb and Gail are here, her husband, Clyde, and my brother, Tom, who's not here. Thanks for their support. Also want to thank my wife, Ruth Ann, who's here today, for putting up with me. And during the week, some of them games, I'd get kind of agitated and didn't want to answer questions. So thanks for putting up with me. And my boys, John, Keith, and Kevin. Keith and Kevin and Eddie are here, and they're my rock. They hold me together. You know, I was fortunate enough to play all those years that he was talking about, and a lot of different teams. I started when I was 10 years old playing Pee-wees, and I ended up playing till I was 36 years old, and I couldn't fool them anymore. But I met a lot of people along the way, obviously, and a lot of characters, and I was fortunate enough to have great coaches that I learned from, and I will always cherish that. And if I could, I'd thank every one of those people, because they were part of the stepping stones to get me where I am today. You know, what I'm most grateful for, you know, I was grateful for having those guys around and those coaches and everything, but I'm grateful the best time of my life was back here when I was playing at Illinois and for Morris High School. I mean, that was one of the greatest times of my life. And, you know, playing for the Rams and in Ohio, for the Bengals, playing down in Florida, those are some big areas for high school football. And I'd go watch games. I'm now coaching in Cincinnati, Ohio. But I tell you what, in the Joliet area, they are second to none for football, high school football around here, and you know that. And I'm grateful for that. You know, like I'm saying, the foundation for my football career started in Morris, and Dave talked about that. And I'm grateful for the coaches we had. We only had 3 coaches. Coach Darlington, I don't know if I should say his name sometime. People might start squirming in here, but I gotta thank Coach Darlington and Coach Steele and Coach Lowry and all the guys. That was some of the greatest times of my life, playing with the high school. My buddies are still the bonds I have today with them are my greatest bonds. Even though I played 4 years at Morris and played 6 years in Cincinnati, I'm in contact with the guys from Morris more than anybody. Those are my guys, and I'm grateful for them. I think my 15 minutes of fame are up, you know. I'm about done. But I want to thank the Hall of Fame for inducting me. This is a great honor for me, and it just humbles me. And I just look forward to the rest of the program, listening to the other guys. Thank you very much.
I also had the opportunity to call Ed and congratulate him on getting into the Hall of Fame. And after I said that he was being inducted, it took him a couple of seconds, and then he finally said, "A guy from little old Morris, Illinois, is going into the Hall of Fame." So that was a great honor for me to make that announcement to Ed, and a moment that I will remember. Our next inductee is Terry Gannon, and his presenter will be Scott Slocum from WJOL Radio. We had 2 great announcers in town. One was smart and went to Los Angeles. The other one stayed in Joliet. Scott Slocum.
Yeah, a few less zeros on my paycheck. That's okay. It's fun. Terrence Patrick Terry Gannon, born November 1st, 1963 in Joliet. Raised on a little street called Farragut Place. It's a 2-block street over in the St. Ray's area near the Cathedral area, street that I also lived on for a few years. And when I moved in, everybody said, "Hey, that's the home of Terry Gannon. His mom still lives there." The road that really doesn't take you anywhere at all. It's 2 blocks and that's about it. But that was not a precursor to his career, because basketball and broadcasting have taken him all around the world. His basketball successes at Joliet Catholic, back-to-back regional titles, something that school doesn't do very often. To North Carolina State, a national championship, got to play for the famous and the late Jim Valvano. Led the nation in 3-point shooting, 2-time academic All-American, which is the most important thing to his daughter, right? The academic All-American. I'm sure you've heard that. Now, that wasn't enough. His broadcasting career started in 1987, regional level, did some college basketball for Raycom Sports before he ventured into professional basketball or college basketball and professional baseball. Well, in 1991, ABC Sports got smart and they hired Terry Gannon. The events he's covered are the biggest in the world. Think about where he's been. The FIFA World Cup, which is going on right now. The Olympics multiple times, including that wonderful coverage during the day in Sochi. Long-form coverage. I don't know how you did that, but that was absolutely, you should have won an award. The Tour de France, the Indy 500, the NBA, the WNBA, the Little League World Series, the Belmont Stakes, the Open Championship in Britain, the U.S. Open, the list goes on and on and on. And now he gets to sit next side of the likes of Sir Nick Faldo and talk golf for the Golf Channel and NBC Sports. But most importantly, he's humble. When he broadcasts a game, it's about the game, not about him. So many broadcasters think they're the show, but not Terry. That's what makes this broadcast so genuine and so enjoyable to listen to. Ladies and gentlemen, the Joliet Area Sports Hall of Fame would like to welcome inductee Terry Gannon to the 2014 class.
God, thank you. Kind words. Don't know that I deserve them, but thank you very much. And thank you for putting me in the Hall of Fame. I mean, anytime you can come home and be recognized, it is meaningful. First of all, I just want to introduce my wife, Lisa, and my son, Jake, could not be here. They're back in L.A. Jake's still in school. I don't know why they're still in school at this point of the summer, but they are. My daughter, Maddie, who's an excellent player herself, is here. And my mom, Mary Fran Gannon, who's the one, I know a lot of you guys know my dad in here, but she's the actual one who taught me to dribble and to shoot in the snow on Farragut Street out there. And my Aunt Rose is here as well. And if you work at the police department or have been to the police department, for other than being arrested, you would know her. And all the faces that I see tonight and all the friends of my dad passed away 11 years ago. And there are a lot of guys in this room who have been telling stories about him for the past 11 years and maybe beyond. For anyone who was in his class and who he sent down to the corner to pick up a pack of cigarettes or a racing form, I apologize right now for the time spent out of class and the time missed learning history. You know, when I think about, we're born over on Clay Street on the east side, Ma, and Farragut Street. Maybe it doesn't go anywhere, only 2 blocks, but it took me to places that I never thought I would get to, and it's because of my family and this town. Early on at NC State playing for Jim Valvano, and I still remember it to this day, and it's kind of humorous, but it was meaningful to me. I had a pretty good game. I don't remember what game it was, and he was standing there talking to reporters afterwards, and they were asking him about my performance. They were impressed that day, and he said, "The kid's from Joliet, Illinois. You ever been to Joliet?" He's not afraid of anything. And truth be told, I was a little bit afraid of Michael Jordan and Sam Perkins. But other than that, I thought, yeah, darn it, I'm from Joliet. I can take on the world. And I kind of believed I could, even when I couldn't. And it took me places. And I've been the luckiest guy in the world. But I've never left Joliet, even though physically I have. You know, I see Pat Sullivan, Coach Sully there, and you know, one of your dear friends, Al McGuire, used to call our games, and he used to love that I was from Joliet because he knew Joliet. Rick Majerus, who was an assistant coach at Marquette, recruited me, and I think the only reason he recruited me is because he would come, step in the gym at Catholic High, make sure I saw him, and he'd go right to Marichka's for 2 big poor boys, like 3 times a week, and God rest his soul, he weighed about 300 pounds, so that's what'll happen. But, you know, at NC State, playing for Jim Valvano, having guys like Al, we went to dinner one time, Coach, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do because I had played and I had a chance to go play in Europe. And I also had an opportunity to go into TV at this time. And then I had a chance to coach. I was a grad assistant for Jim Valvano. That's what I wanted to do. My dad was a lifelong coach. I wanted to follow in his footsteps. And so I went out to dinner at a Meteos in Raleigh with Jim Valvano and Al McGuire, who was in town to do the game that day. And we sat there, and for about an hour, Al tried to talk me out of coaching. But I had no idea what he was saying. He would say, "Terry, you go down the street and you coach the St. Anthony's 6th grade CYO team. Okay, that's what you do." And I'd look over at Jim Valvano and he'd go, "He means it's too tough to coach. Too many headaches. You don't want to deal with 18-year-olds controlling your future." I'd look back at Al. He'd tell me something else, and then V would translate again. But it was all along the way, I never really mapped out what I wanted to do, to be honest. All I ever wanted to do when it was 5 below and you'd shovel the snow on Farragut Street in the backyard was be as good as guys like Bill Benson, Mike Gillespie, Tim Bell, Louis Capista, all the guys who played for my dad. That's all I ever wanted to be. And I would ask my dad, "Do you think I'll ever be as good as Billy Benson?" "Christ, you're as good as him right now." I was like in 6th grade, you know. And he made me believe. And And my mom and my dad and this town gave me the greatest gift ever. They and it believed in me. And if I can ever return that to Maddie or to Jake or anyone else I come into contact with, I hope so. And it paved the way for everything that I've accomplished. So thank you for putting me in this Hall of Fame. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this class, which is pretty impressive. And congratulations to the other guys going in. And thank you to Joliet for allowing me to do whatever it is I've done since then. Thank you.
Whereas our first two inductees are from the Joliet area in Morris, and obviously Joliet, as Terry talked about. Ken Parker started in Granite City, Illinois, and that's why we consider Granite City, Illinois a gift for giving us Ken Parker for the number of years that they did for this great city of Joliet. And to present Ken and his family will be Dick Goss, the great sports editor for our great sports town in the Joliet Herald News.
Thank you very much, Dave. As Dave said, Ken Parker was a gift from Granite City. Well, we had a gift that kept on giving for 60-plus years in this community. Ken was a three-sport athlete at Granite City, which was pretty common in those days. But he was an all-state basketball player. And he wound up at the University of Illinois. As you can see on the letter sweater and the team picture here, he was a member of the Whiz Kids at the University of Illinois, one of the most famous college basketball teams of all time. After Illinois, he went to serve in the Navy, came back out, started his coaching career. Not long after he started his coaching career, a couple stops in small towns, he arrived in Joliet, at Joliet Central. Coached there for 12 seasons as the head basketball coach. His last team, last varsity team, went 22-6. Had some names that some of you might remember on there. Doug Zeke, Sammy Miller, Willie Boyce. They were obviously an outstanding basketball team. After he stepped aside from varsity coaching, he wound up coaching a freshman team for a couple of years at Joliet Central. Those teams combined record 47-3. The 4 years through the middle 60s, 64 to 68, he was the athletic director at both Joliet Central and Joliet Junior College. Some of you have been athletic directors in this room. Matt, what do you think of that? Being an athletic director at two programs, two schools at the same time. He remained the athletic director at JJC through 1977, and during that era, in the 70s, of course, Joliet Junior College had excellent nationally known wrestling team with Hank Pillard, who is a member of our Joliet Area Sports Hall of Fame, and Jerry Yost's football teams also achieved national prominence. Also something that Ken was proud of, he implemented the physical education major at Joliet Junior College. Well, along the way, while he was doing that, son Mark was coming up through the ranks. 3 years of coaching the St. Pat's grade school basketball team that had Mark and many of his good friends on it. 71-1 combined record in 3 seasons. I know Don Sturl is here tonight, one of Mark's old teammates. He went on to play high school, college basketball. He's told me that he learned more basketball from Mr. Parker than from anyone. Goose Gillespie, one of Gordy's sons, also played on those teams. During a special evening when members of those teams and other family friends of the Parkers got together at their house, Goose told me for several minutes about how much basketball he learned from Ken. Remember, this is one of Gordy's sons. So that just gives you an idea what Gordy knew about, or what Ken knew about basketball. So certainly Ken has the athletic credentials to be in the Hall of Fame. However, he also is a Hall of Famer in other ways. I'll tell you just a couple of things I've heard since he passed away last September. Glenn Markham is the driving force behind the Joliet Township Athletic Boosters Night of Champions. The annual banquet, which is a decade old now, got off to a flying start, he told me, because Mr. Parker was honored the very first year. He said, you wouldn't believe how many people wanted to come out and see Mr. Parker honored, and they just kept coming for years after that because they knew he would be there, and they just wanted a chance to see him again. He was that kind of a personality. I know Sully was here. I don't know if he's still here. Yeah, there he is. Yeah, Pat Sullivan, we were speaking together at Ken's wake, and what Sully said to me was how blessed we are to have had two coaches the caliber of Gordy and Ken here in Joliet. He said, here's a guy, Ken, who played on the Whiz Kids, one of the most famous basketball teams ever, and you would never know it because of his humility. When I was at the at Ken's funeral, I noticed on the program at the funeral mass there was a statement of the Parker. There was a Parker family mission statement. Each of the letters in Parker standing for something. P for positive attitude. A for all your effort all the time. R, remain humble. K, keep building others up. E, everything happens for a reason. And R, reach out to serve others. Well, those of you who knew Ken in this room, that fit him perfectly. The mission statement was developed by Ellie Parker, who is here tonight, one of Mark's children, and her brother Carson. And they said that they implemented it based on the lives that their grandparents, Ken and Marita, lived. So when you're talking about Ken Parker, you're talking about respect, class, professionalism, not just somebody who knew athletics inside and out. Talking about a true Hall of Famer. My regret is that Ken is not with us tonight, but so many of his wonderful family are. If you don't know the Parkers, never had a chance to talk with some of the family, I suggest you do so somewhere along the way tonight. You'll see you'll notice a lot of Ken in each one of them. So congratulations to all the Parkers. And Ken, wherever you're watching this from, congratulations to you. This is a very well-deserved honor. Thank you. Ken? I'm going to bring up Ken's oldest son, Kent, to accept this plaque.
Well, I can't say I'm not used to being in my father's shadow. He was 6'4", and I wore size 11 shoe, even though I'm a 10, and lied on my driver's license that said I was 6 feet for about 30 years. I'm still lying on my driver's license, but not about height anymore. I'd like to give a personal remembrance about my dad. I think you've got a good sense about his athletic background, which is certainly phenomenal in its own right. If he were here, he would be appreciative and grateful, but I think he would pretty quickly thank his family, and particularly thank my brother Dave for all the time and energy and efforts that he put into helping to put my dad's part of this together. My dad wasn't larger than life, and it's, I guess, no surprise from hearing Rich say it. He was very down to earth. He was smart, genuine, humorous, and personable. And as it turned out, I found out really at his wake, when there were about 500 people there, that he had almost eidetic imagery for remembering faces and names. Unbelievable. My mom said that he could just pick out people after 30 years on the street and say, oh yeah, I had you in class and I haven't turned your grade in yet, so you better shape up. He did have a 68-year marriage. My mother will say that she got all the best of it. Well, when you heard my dad talk, you knew that it was very mutual. When I would be staying with them, come down the stairs, and they'd be talking every morning. I mean, every morning, and just connecting with each other. And we know sometimes marriages don't last very long. Well, they had a very strong bond for 68 years, and it was quite something. My dad really was my hero from very early on. He would do things like in the dead of winter, maybe not quite as bad as this one you all had last year. I live in California, and there weren't any flights from California to Chicago for about 3 months, which was okay with me. But he would get under the house and unfreeze the pipes. He'd drive nonstop, more or less, for us to go to New Jersey, the Jersey Shore every summer, where we stayed with my grandmother. He would always support his children and grandchildren, drive to Iowa, drive to Cincinnati, drive wherever to be there for the kids. And one of the things that you might not have thought about my dad, but is very true, my sister started swimming when she was about 7 years old, and he was an ardent supporter of female athletics, getting girls and women to have the same opportunities right from the start as boys did. Back in my day, all we had at school was GAA, which was not really that useful for the talented females who might have otherwise gone on to play sports as they do now.
He also provided the stopwatches.
Well, in the last part of what I'm going to say, I want to turn back the clock 60 years. In the spring of 1955, JT played West Rockford in basketball. West Rockford would go on to win 2 consecutive state championships, both times, I believe, beating the great team from Edwardsville with Governor Vaughn and Manny Jackson. They had 6'8", 6'7", and 6'5", 60 years ago across the front line. Nolan Gentry, John Wessels, and then they had a guard, Bobby Washington, who was also All-State. Our front line was Teddy James, Jerry Keir, and Larry Waddell, 6'1", 6'2", 6'1". For 3 quarters, our team absolutely played them even. I mean, absolutely. It was thrilling that we could stay with a great team like that. They did pull away in the 4th quarter, not by a lot, but by some. It was an example of several things that are characteristic qualities of my father. First of all, he was almost always able to get the best out of his teams. And even when they didn't win, they always gave their best, every game. And even if they didn't win, it was okay because they never quit. So if you flip that back into flash forward about, well, a number of years back to last September. My dad had been ill for going on 2 years. He had pneumonia and various maladies that really diminished him. And he went back to St. Joe's Hospital one last time, and it really looked like the end was there. He couldn't sleep, wasn't eating, just wasn't himself at all. Wasn't talking to people, didn't care about the sports section, didn't watch ESPN. Really, you figured it was over. So when they discharged him from St. Joe's, he did go to Alden in Shorewood, and they began a physical therapy regimen with him again, and he made a tremendous recovery. You wouldn't have known it was him from 2 weeks before. He was up and walking, he was socializing, he was going to the cafeteria, he was his old self. In fact, he was so much his old self that by the end of that week, he was going to go home. And that was really wonderful for everybody. Well, he was in the midst of a conversation on a Tuesday morning with his roommate about sports, which is, a routine thing for him to do. And all of a sudden, he stopped talking, and his heart stopped. The doctors had said he had been a medical miracle. His heart had been about 20%, literally, for a number of years, but had gotten worse. It was about 10% at the time of his passing. So you could say this. He went quietly, quickly, presumably without suffering. He was on the rise. We all know people who have gone downhill and suffered greatly and with agony, and he did not. But I think that you could say that he died as he lived. He never quit, and he always gave his best.
Before we get to our next two inductees, I would like to recognize some of the other 44 members previously to this induction ceremony who have been inducted and are here tonight. Bob Basarich, the great Lockport High School coach who was inducted in 2005. Bob's in the back there. Hank Pillard from 2006, the great things he did for Joliet Junior College and the world of wrestling. Chris Preboy, who's considered the premier female athlete in the history of Joliet, and she was a member of the class of 2006. And Billy Boy Thompson, who has always wanted to fight me, but I just stay away. And he was... he was in the class of 2004. And we'd also like to take the time to recognize another great giant of the Joliet sports world who passed away earlier this year, who was an original member of the 2003 class and also was on our original Joliet Area Sports Hall of Fame committee, and that was Don Lattis, who was again inducted in 2003. Our next inductee won 300 football games and started the program from scratch. That's Matt Seffner. Presenting him will be his longtime friend Kent Irvin and the former athletic director, the great athletic director at Lockport High School.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. I've always looked up to Matt. As you can see, we even wear the same outfits. Get the beard, the white hair. Try to look up to this man all the time. Seriously, all I can say about Matt Seffner is with respect, admiration, and I'm honored to be the person who can induct Matt into this Hall of Fame. As Dave said, I don't like to read a lot of statistics, but you can't talk about Matt unless you talk about statistics, which are unbelievable from any stretch of the imagination. First of all, we'll start out with Matt starting out at Providence in 1966. He built a program from scratch to become one of the premier programs, not just in Illinois, but as far as I'm concerned, in the United States of America. Matt Seffner, over 40 years, and we know today, coaches don't stay in the business as long as they used to. So 40 years, not just being a coach, but being a coach at the very top of his game. He was there as the head coach of the Celtic program, the only one that he'd ever been a part of, and he made the premier program. No program has ever made as many consecutive state title game appearances, 5 from 1994 to 1990, not that old man, I'm sorry, to 1998 as Providence, and only 2, Joliet Catholic, which was where Matt went to school, his alma mater, and Mount Carmel have won more state championships. Matt captured 9 state crowns in 11 title game appearances. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And again, going over this with his appearances, he earned 26 state playoff bids over his 38-year varsity coaching career. And during that time, the Celtics earned, as Dave said, 300 wins with only 114 setbacks. He had one tie. The percentage of winning, 724 winning percentage, which, again, just is amazing, including an amazing stretch of 50 straight wins from 1994 to 97 when Providence won 4 consecutive state titles. Matt's teams were also ranked nationally 7 times. The 5th all-time winningest football coach in the state. Seffner also oversaw the entire athletic program for 27 of his 40 years at the school, with 15 other state championships being won under his leadership. And as a former athletic director at Lockport, I cannot imagine the excellence of being the coach that he was and also ran the program at the top of its level across the board. It's amazing how he could do all of those things. It's just unbelievable. So, again, with those accomplishments that have come, numerous accolades, including he has been called one of the greatest coaches of all time in Illinois, including 5 Midwest Coach of the Year honors, 2 Man of the Year distinctions, and 1 Citizen of the Year distinction and selection. This also marks his 6th induction into a Hall of Fame following the likes of the Chicagoland Sports, Providence Catholic, Chicago Catholic League, Lewis University, and Illinois High School Football Coaches Association Hall of Fame. All of those Matt is in. But again, I think what I want to also talk about a couple of things is when you're involved in what he does, it's one thing to get there. That's half the fun sometimes, to get on top. The hardest thing is staying there, keeping the excellence going, because what happened with him was the expectations of Providence got so high. Every time he ever played anybody, it was the Super Bowl, because all they wanted to do is try to beat his program, because they knew if they could beat Providence, that was a standard of excellence that would take them all the way through. So my point is, I guess with Matt, he was construction, but he was also in maintenance. He was always building. He was always trying to make things better. He never stopped building and trying to make things better. And yet he was also in that maintenance mode, trying to keep things at a quality level that he did so well. And the last thing I want to say, too, about Matt, before I go to one more statement, is what a mentor he was to so many other coaches that worked on his staff that went on to great things. George Chart, for example, is over at Lincoln Way North. Brett Coy, state champion, worked for him. I can go down the list of how many great coaches learned from this man. And that's what he always has kept doing. He's still teaching. He's still coaching. He's still trying to help others. So to me, he's a great man because of what he gives back to others. And I had one statement I want to read that I think sums it all about Matt Seffner. A man is a success who has lived well, laughed often, and loved much, who looked for the best in others and gave the best he had. I'm honored to induct Matt Seffner in the Hall of Fame of Joliet Hall of Fame.
Oh, my notes are all getting all sweaty in there. Holy mackerel. All right, first of all, I can remember you playing in the I-80 Classic out of Providence, lighting it up, beating the Celtics in Walter Downing's years. Not often. No? You did it. You did it. And Scotty, there's a reason why you are in the radio and why he is on TV. Now just take a look at his face, and then take a look at his face. There's a reason. I know, you're going to get back at me sooner or later. And a story about Mr. Parker. probably right when I retired, you know, old guys, you get used to getting up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'd get antsy, and I'd look in the fridge and I'd say, well, maybe we need some of this, or maybe Wanda needs some cream for her coffee. So I'd go over to the Jewel. And I can't tell you how many times I saw your dad. He'd ride his bike, and this is like 8 years ago, ride his bike up to the Jewel. And the first day I saw him doing it, after I retired, I'm checking out, and he taps me on the shoulder. How do you think the Celtics are going to do this year? And bingo. You know, it just, you know, we're there talking, and every girl, the checkout ladies all knew him. And he went every day, he bought a banana. Bought a banana. That was all he would buy. And he says, I said, why don't you buy more? He says, then I got to come back tomorrow. He wanted to make sure that he had something to do the next day. And I understand it. What an awesome guy. And he kept up on all the local sports. He was just one heck of a guy. One heck of a guy. And it's okay that you can say Dan Darlington's name in this area now. Okay. Dan and I, over time, got to be good friends. Over time. And he was what we'd always help one another out with our opponents. But he was, you know, he knew his football, and he worked hard at it, and he was very successful. Congratulations to all the other inductees here tonight. I am truly honored to be with them in a Hall of Fame that represents Joliet, as Don Lattis coined the phrase, the city of champions. Over the years, there have been many people who I can honestly say that share this honor with me. Number one, I had so many wonderful athletes that came through the football program out at Providence, and the great parents that supported their children and supported our program. You know, we needed things, people would come and help out, whatever we needed. And Tom Deeden can tell you that, you know, you wanted to build something, you go, hey, who's got something they can, and everybody dug deep, and they helped us out, that we got things that we normally wouldn't be able to have. Number two, over the years, I had some awesome coaches. And we can go, there's a long list, and many of them are very, very successful high school head coaches now in the area. And I'm kind of glad I got out. I don't want him beating my butt anymore. You know, they're all good, and they're very, very successful. I want to thank also the administration and the faculty at Providence, because the administration got as many things as we could possibly afford, and they worked hard at it. And the faculty, you know, we're a college prep school, and it was always, we had the no F policy. And I can remember some of the Dominican sisters from down in Nashville. This one sister, George, her name was, and she'd say, now, Coach Sefner, I want to let you know that some of your boys will be late for practice today. Now, if you want to have them on Saturday, they're going to have to stay with me tonight. I said, sister, you got them. And they passed, and that was what it was all about. She was a sweetheart, and I thank all those teachers that we had that got the kids the education so that they can get into the colleges that they were going to attend. And my very first AD at Providence, my first boss, Tom Deeden, who's here tonight. Thirdly, and mostly, my family. Maddie Jr., my son, Mark, he's here with his wife, Colleen, tonight. My daughter, Christy's down in Arkansas trying to sell something to Walmart. She's a marketing person. And her husband, Tom. My son, Luke, and Erica, who are back there with their baby. And I know I got 3 or 4 other grandchildren here tonight. And I just want to say thank you for all their support. And then the glue that held everything together for all of those years, my beautiful sweetheart, for over 50 years, my life, Wanda. And finally, thanks to the nominating committee for considering me and for all the hard work that they do to put on an event like this. The chairman, Dave Laquetta, this guy is incredible. I always thought my desk in my office was a disaster. I always said I was a sign of a hard-working person. I believe that. You go into Dave's office, his office is 4 times bigger than mine, and he's got probably 10 times more stuff all over, but he's working his tail off. He's running a golf thing, he's running this, and he's doing all kinds of things, and Dave deserves a lot of credit for doing all this work, he had to do the program. He's just one of those guys, a workaholic. He don't have a wife, but he does have a wife, his job, and he does a great job. Thank you very much.
I think the greatest thing about all of our inductees through the years, and many of the people on the committee for the Joliet Area Sports Hall of Fame, which I'll recognize a little bit later on, not only did the people excel in athletics, but they excelled as gentlemen and ladies, and they were always the consummate professionals. And that is no different for this class of 5 inductees. You heard about their great accomplishments on the fields, in the arenas, and the same holds true for Mr. Brent Wadsworth. Not only his successes in the golf construction business, but the foundation that he started in 1997. And here to talk about Brent is another great individual who's brought us a lot of great Hall of Fame inductees from Joliet Township, and that's Lynn Lichtenauer, the Alumni Director. Lynn?
Thank you very much, Dave. Well, Dave mentioned about golf, so we're going to talk a little bit about golf. And I know many of you here play the game. I don't. I never got those genes from my father or my mother, who were excellent golfers. But I'm so proud to call Brent Wadsworth my friend for over 30 years. He's a most humble man, a wonderful gentleman, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about him so that you can get to know Brent Wadsworth. He's the founder and chairman of Wadsworth Golf Construction Company in Plainfield, Illinois, and he was born in Buffalo, New York, and grew up in Joliet and graduated from Joliet Township High School in 1947. Upon his graduation from the School of Architecture at the University of Illinois, he worked for prominent golf course architect Bruce Harris, followed by 2 years of his serving his country in the United States Air Force. In 1954, he created his own company devoted to golf course construction, and since 1958, Wadsworth Golf Construction Companies have built more than 857 courses in nearly every state, including Alaska and Hawaii, making his company the largest builder of golf courses in the United States. Brent was inducted into the PGA Hall of Fame in 1991 and has received some of the golf industry's biggest and highest awards, putting him beside fellow honorees such as Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, and many other noted professionals both on and off the golf courses. In the Joliet area, you have probably golfed on Brent's courses: Wedgewood Golf Club, Heritage Bluffs in Shanahan, and Prairie Bluff in Crest Hill. In 2010, his firm renovated the number 4 course at Cog Hill, the jewel known as Dub's Dread. Wadsworth's philanthropy and care for his community is on par with his professional accomplishments. Established in 1995, the Wadsworth Golf Charities Foundation is dedicated to improving society. Included in the list of recipients of Brent's generosity and of his commitment to give back to his community are the Friends of Community Public Art, and Brent sponsored the bronze sculpture of Jesse Barfield in front of this ballpark, and the bronze sculpture of George Mikan located on Broadway Street, each of whom are inductees into the Sports Hall of Fame. Also, the gifts from the Wadsworth Foundation to the other organizations in Joliet, Joliet Township High School Alumni Association, and the Joliet Township High School Foundation, of which he provided over $800,000 in gifts to those organizations. Also, beneficiary of his generosity, Lewis University, Joliet Area Historical Museum, the University of St. Francis, the Joliet American Legion Band, the Billy Leemacher Bicentennial Park Theater, the Rialto Square Theater Endowment, and many, many more, too numerous to mention. Brent and his wife Jean reside in Yorkville and have 4 children. It is my distinct privilege to introduce to you my friend and a great humble man, Brent Wadsworth.
Well, I don't have any notes, so it won't be long. When I started in life, it was going to be something that I didn't know anything about, and I never expected to be here tonight, believe me. But I'm proud to be here, and I'm proud of 2 aspects of my life that have influenced me in many ways. Number 1, the city of Joliet is the greatest place in the country. It's diverse, it's got caring people, it's the hub of the world in terms of transportation, and it just goes on and on. The best educational system in the country, and I'm just proud to be a part of this great city. It means a lot. Now, the second thing that means a lot, of course, to me is golf. It's called the greatest game, and for good reason. It's played from youth to old age, and there's many fine golfers that start out as youngsters but play into their old age, and it means a lot of joy to them. And as a person who started in high school playing golf for the golf team there, and incidentally I didn't do very well, but I did enough to hang around. And it's a game that includes women and men, and so it's all inclusive. And somehow I decided that it might be something that I might enjoy in life. And so I started this business never thinking that I would ever end up in a place like this. But I'm proud of the game, and I'm proud to be a part of it. It's a game that never ceases to amaze you in many ways. In fact, I said to somebody tonight, give up on the 300-yard drive. It's the 4-foot putt that determines a winner. And if you can practice at it enough, you can accomplish the fact that it is hard, but it's also a winner. So I've learned that through the years. I'd like to thank the many people that have helped me along the way. My wife, who's here tonight, Jean, my daughter, Martha, and most of all, the people that have worked for me for a long time. First of all, I got Jim Bannon, who's here. He's a resident of Joliet, worked for me for 25 years, and he served us well all these years. And I've still got the first guy I ever hired back in 1958, John Cotter, who I consider as not only a friend, but as a person that has helped me along the way. So I appreciate all the help I've had. And I thank everybody for allowing me to be here tonight. This was a wonderful evening. It meant a lot to me. So thank you, and thank you.
You told me to turn it right side up. I don't have my glasses on.
Well, Mayor, you do have 5 new spokespeople for the great city of Joliet right now. The 4 here and the 1 up in heaven, spouting off about how great Joliet is. So congratulations again to our 5 inductees. I would like to thank the members of our Hall of Fame committee. It is a group of 25 individuals. I'm going to recognize those who are here tonight and have helped reinvigorate our Hall of Fame here in Joliet. John Albrecht, Mike Brick, Chris Franklin of the Joliet Slammers. We thank him for his hospitality tonight. Bernie Girl, Mayor Tom Durante of the City of Joliet, who is sponsoring this event and has done so since it began in 2003. Dick Goss, Jim Greenan, Kent Irvin, Larry Kane, Lynn Lichtenauer, Greg Pierbolt, John Randich, Dick Schuster, Matt Seffner, and Scott Slocum. How about a round of applause for each of those individuals? I'd like to also thank our inductees for the great gifts that they have given to the Joliet Area Sports Hall of Fame. I know Ed has some signed photos of his playing days in high school, college with Illinois, and in the professional ranks. We also have the Letterman sweater from Ken Parker and the great picture of the Whiz Kids, a jacket and hat that Coach Seffner wore on the sidelines, and a great picture after one of his great victories. Terry Gannon, his jersey from North Carolina State. And Brent Wadsworth was going to give us a golf course, but we couldn't fit it into the room. So we said no to that. But thank you to each of those for preserving the history and the legacy that each of you have brought to make a treasure of Joliet, Illinois. Before we wrap things up, you know, we talked about the excitement of getting the Hall of Fame going again. Our last class was inducted in 2010. One of those individuals who's going to help us make this bigger and better is Greg Pierbolt from the Joliet Area Historical Museum, which is just a couple blocks down. He has gifts for each of our new 5 inductees, and we'll talk a little bit more after Greg makes his presentation. But we also do have some pictures around the room. I have some pictures here of the display that eventually we will be moving this great facility, which is really starting to get crowded because we've had so many inductees. And we're moving this to the Joliet Area the Historical Museum a few years down the road here, and doing some great things so many more people can really look and see the accomplishments of the great class of 2014 as well as all the previous classes. Greg?
Thank you, Dave. How about a round of applause for Dave for his leadership on this project, serving as our chair, and Mayor Durante for really getting things back up and running. Mayor, thank you. I actually grew up nearby in Kankakee, which is Bishop McNamara country, and I think they're still talking about that one time they beat Providence. So. But on behalf of our board of directors, staff, and membership, I salute all the inductees tonight. As many of you know, one of Joliet's greatest legacies is its nickname as the City of Champions. And while it was originally given this title because of the national success of its marching band, its success and accomplishment in prep, collegiate, and professional sports across such a wide array as represented here tonight is certainly a colossal fact of that legacy. So tonight we honor 5 of our hometown champions, and I've learned that just victory is not the sole virtue of a champion. It's an unyielding pursuit of excellence, and it's acknowledgement that greatness is often an unwavering chase and rarely a capture. So these inductees represent not only the act of winning, but the pursuit of greatness and the demonstration of professional excellence. We would like to announce tonight that the museum looks forward to showcasing your accomplishments and the entire Sports Hall of Fame's accomplishments to the great American story of sports. And with the hard work of the City of Joliet, the committee, the Office of the Mayor, the Slammers, the Joliet Area Historical Museum will soon become the permanent home of the Joliet Area Sports Hall of Fame, and it will showcase the artifacts, accomplishments, and legacies of the Joliet Area Hall of Famers to the museum's 25,000 and counting annual visitors from across the community, the region, the country, and quite literally from around the world. So as a small token of praise for all of your achievements, we bestow lifetime membership to the Joliet Area Historical Museum to each member of the class of 2014 and their families. So thank you and congratulations to the entire class of 2014.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you to everybody. This is just the first part of an exciting evening for everybody. In about 15 minutes, we will go on the field to do a public presentation for all of the other many guests who couldn't obviously fit into this room, for the many family members. We will also have each of our inductees throw out a first pitch before the Slammers game. And then we will have our inductees for about the first inning sign some autographs for people on the concourse, while the rest of the family members will go up to the suite to start the picnic supper, again provided by the City of Joliet with the assistance of the Joliet Slammers Professional Baseball Club. So we've got about 15 minutes, and then we'll have our presenters escort the inductees onto the field. All family members are welcome to go on the field as well, and then we will come back to this room and then head up to the suites. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening. If we can have the 5 inductees, the 4 inductees, and Kent, if you guys can come up for one quick group picture, and then we'll disperse. Congratulations. Thank you.
Maddie, come here. That's what I'm talking about. Where's Mike in the end? He is playing. He made it. Yeah, 2000, like 1900.
Down behind home plate as we present the Joliet Area Sports Hall of Fame inductees. My honor to introduce to you our MC for the event, Dave Lickett.
Thank you, Nicholas. Appreciate it. And welcome everybody as part of the Joliet Slammers game tonight. It's a special night for Joliet and the surrounding area as we induct our 7th class of inductees into our Joliet Area Sports Hall of Fame. 5 different representatives. We're going to introduce you to each of the 5 tonight. Our first inductee is Ed Brady, who earned all-state recognition as a linebacker and led the Redskin program to the first of what has become 10 state championship game appearances. Brady went on to play and earn 4 letters in the University of Illinois Fighting Illini program, where he participated in the Liberty Bowl in 1982, and 1 year later, he was the starting linebacker for the last Illinois team to win a Big Ten title outright, and the only Illini squad in the history of the program to go a perfect 9-0 in league play en route to an appearance in the Rose Bowl that year. Brady again made history by being one of the earliest area players to get drafted by an NFL team when he was selected by the Los Angeles Rams in the 8th round in 1984. 1 year later, he was on the sideline opposite the eventual Chicago Bears Super Bowl championship team, playing in the NFC title game at Soldier Field. Brady himself got to play in the Super Bowl a few years later in 1989 with the Cincinnati Bengals, and then he closed out his 12-year NFL career serving as a long snapper with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from 1992 to 1995. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Ed Brady into the Joliet Area Sports Hall of Fame. Just stay right here. Thank you. Terry Gannon. Where there have been championships, Terry Gannon has been right in the thick of things, whether as a player or a broadcaster. He played for the 1983 North Carolina State National Championship team and established the school's single-season three-point shooting record with a .589 percentage that year, which was also the nation's best marksmanship from beyond the three-point arc that season in 1983. He's also North Carolina State's all-time leading free throw shooter with an .854 percentage. He was a 2-time academic All-American selection during his 4 years with the Wolfpack program. Gannon got his start at Joliet Catholic, where he led the program's first ever back-to-back regional championships, averaging 25-some points per game. He started his broadcasting career in 1987. ABC Sports came calling in 1991, and since then he's covered college football and basketball, the NBA and WNBA, the British and U.S. Opens, figure skating, World Cup, Little League World Series, Tour de France, Indianapolis 500, and the Belmont Stakes. He's a current member of the Golf Channel team and covered the Olympics for many years for NBC Sports, including this past winter at the 2014 Sochi Games. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Terry Gannon, the class of 2014. Our next inductee is Kent Parker, who passed away earlier this year, and representing him will be his brothers Kent, Mark, and Dave, as well as his sister. And his sister Myrita, my apologies. Ken was a gift from Granite City, Illinois, where he was a three-sport standout. He had a 28-year run between stops at Joliet Township High School and Joliet Junior College. He was an all-state basketball player at Granite City his senior year and played at the University of Illinois, where he was the sixth man on the legendary Whiz Kids team in 1942-43 that won the Big Ten championship for the second straight year and went 17-1 overall. However, they did not compete in the NCAA tournament that year, despite being ranked number 1 in the nation, because 3 of their starters went off to war that year. A lieutenant himself in the United States Navy during World War II, who who was also part of the D-Day invasion of Normandy, France, Ken Parker arrived in Joliet in 1949 and had a 12-year run as the Steelman head basketball coach. He also performed the rarest of feats, serving as the dual athletic director at both the high school and Joliet Junior College from 1964 to 1968. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ken Parker and his family into the 2014 Joliet Area Sports Hall of Fame. Matt Sefner from Providence Catholic High School. Matt started the football program from scratch in 1966, and over the next 40 years, he was the only head coach the Celtic program had ever known, crafting one of the premier programs in the state of Illinois. No program has ever made as many as consecutive state title game appearances as the Celtics, which was 5 from 1994 to 98, and only two teams have won more state championships than Providence. Sefner captured 9 state crowns in 11 title game appearances and earned 26 state playoff bids over his 38-year varsity coaching career. During that time, the Celtics earned 300 wins against just 114 setbacks. And during one stretch, they won 50 straight football games from 1994 to 1997, when they won 4 consecutive state titles. Sefner's teams were also ranked nationally 7 times. He's the 5th all-time winningest football coach in the state of Illinois. This is his 6th induction into a Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Sefner. And last but not least, Brent Wadsworth. If you love golf, this is the man you got to give all the credit to. He has helped build or redesign over 850 courses, along with the Wadsworth Golf Construction Company. He's also helped develop and start in 1997 the Wadsworth Golf Charities Foundation, a U.S. Air Force serviceman from 1952 to 1954. Wadsworth settled in Plainfield to begin his career as one of the prominent golf course architects. Courses with the Wadsworth touch can be found in no fewer than 44 states today. In 2005 alone, 28 Wadsworth courses were included in America's 100 best residential golf courses, including 5 in the top 10. That same year, 2 of his courses earned Best New Upscale Course and Best New Private Course. Wadsworth also helped redesign the Augusta National Golf Club and helped build 3 tournament players' courses. He joined the likes of Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus when he was bestowed with the prestigious Donald Ross and Don Rossi Awards in 1993 and 2000 respectively. He has also earned the University of Illinois Alumni Lifetime Achievement Award and the Joliet Township High School Distinguished Alumni Award. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brent Wadsworth.